We had it yesterday. Just family, you know. You wouldn't fit in anyway. The bank statement showed $28,000 gone from my savings. My son Ryan had drained my account for his Beverly Hills engagement party, then casually informed me I hadn't been invited because I wouldn't fit in with Emma's upscale family. 30 years of sacrifices. College tuition, car payments, business bailouts, emergency funds. And this was my reward, being told by my own child that I was an embarrassment to his success story, useful only for my wallet. Have you ever been told by your own children that you wouldn't fit into their important moments? Share your story in the comments below. You're not alone in this pain. The bank statement lay across my easel like a canvas painted in betrayal. $28,000. Gone. The numbers stared back at me from my savings account, a withdrawal I had never authorized. I am David Mitchell, 62 years old, and this Adobe studio in Taos, New Mexico, has been my refuge for 4 years. Ever since Helen died of a stroke, I have lived alone among my paintings, abstract oils that gather dust while I gather memories of better days. Helen used to sit in that corner chair, watching me work. "Your art has soul, David," she would say. "One day the world will see what I see." But the world never looked, and after she passed, I stopped trying to make them. The bank statement showed a transfer to Hartwell Events in Beverly Hills. $28,000 of my life savings gone without my knowledge, but I knew who had access to my account. 3 years ago, when Helen was dying, I had added my son Ryan to my banking. "Just for emergencies, Dad," he had said. Ryan was 30 now, an event planner in Los Angeles. My daughter Lisa, 27, worked in media in Denver but always followed her brother's lead. My hands trembled as I dialed Ryan's number. "Yeah, Dad, what's up? I'm busy." "Ryan, I'm looking at my bank statement. There's a $28,000 withdrawal I don't remember making." A pause. Then a laugh. Not nervous, but dismissive. "Oh, that. Yeah, I used some money for the engagement party. Don't worry about it. It's not like you're using it for anything important." The words hit like a physical blow, not using it for anything important. This was my security, scraped together from Helen's jewelry, my small pension, insurance money meant to keep me comfortable. Engagement party? What engagement party, Ryan? Emma and I got engaged last month. Had the party yesterday at the Beverly Hills Hotel. It was amazing, Dad. You should have seen it. My heart stopped. Yesterday? What time was I supposed to be there? The silence stretched forever. I could hear voices in the background, laughter, celebration, continuing without me. "Oh, Dad." Ryan's voice turned cold, matter of fact. "We had it yesterday. Just family, you know. Emma's parents, her sister, close friends. You wouldn't fit in anyway. It was pretty upscale. You wouldn't fit in anyway." I sank into Helen's chair, staring at the mountains we used to hike together. The phone felt heavy in my hand. "Dad? You there?" "I'm here," I whispered. "Look, I gotta go. Emma's family wants to celebrate more. Don't stress about the money, okay? You've got plenty. I'll pay you back eventually." The line went dead. I sat in the growing darkness of my studio, surrounded by paintings that nobody wanted, holding a bank statement that proved my own son saw me the same way the world saw my art. Worthless, except for what he could take from me. $28,000 for a party I wasn't invited to. A celebration where I wouldn't fit in. But as I folded that statement and placed it back on my easel, something shifted inside me. The hurt was still there, but underneath it, something harder was growing, something that tasted like steel. Tomorrow, things would be different. The phone slipped from my fingers and clattered onto the studio floor. "You wouldn't fit in anyway." The words echoed in my empty house, each repetition cutting deeper. I sat frozen in Helen's chair, as darkness crept across the mountains. 4 years ago, she had died in this same chair, whispering her final words. "Take care of our babies, David. They'll always need their father." Our babies. The memories flooded back like a dam bursting. Ryan at 18, crying because he couldn't get into college. I worked double shifts to pay for private tutoring, $20,000 borrowed against our house to get him into UCLA. Lisa at 22, calling from Denver in tears when her first job fell through. $3,000 from selling Helen's grandmother's jewelry so she could pay rent. Ryan's failed food truck business, $15,000 down the drain, but I smiled and called it education. Lisa's graduate school when her scholarship was cut. $12,000 from our retirement savings because education is something nobody can take away. Ryan's car payments between jobs. Lisa's apartment deposits. Emergency room visits, insurance deductibles, credit card debts. I quietly absorbed so my children could start their lives without financial stress. 30 years of saying yes. 30 years of putting their needs before my comfort, their dreams before my security. Helen and I lived modestly, saved carefully, sacrificed gladly because we believed that's what parents do. And now my son had stolen $28,000 for a party where I wouldn't fit in. I picked up the phone and stared at Ryan's number. Part of me wanted to call back, to beg for an explanation. The old David would have done that, the David who spent 30 years being grateful for scraps of attention from his children. But something had broken during that phone call. Not just my heart, that had been cracking for years as my children grew more distant, demanding, dismissive. What broke was my willingness to accept it. Helen's voice whispered in my memory. "You're worth more than you know, David. Don't let anyone make you forget that." I stood slowly, joints protesting. Around me, my paintings caught the last window light, abstracts born from grief and loneliness, expressions of a soul that had given until almost nothing remained. But not quite nothing. I walked to my easel and picked up a clean brush. Tomorrow, I would not call Ryan to apologize for being hurt. I would not send money to smooth over this crisis. I would not pretend his cruelty was my fault. Tomorrow, I would remember what Helen saw in me, and I would make sure my son learned exactly who he had decided to betray. The mountains outside stood silent and strong against the darkening sky. Like them, I would endure. But unlike them, I would not remain unchanged by the storms that tried to break me. The phone rang at 7 the next morning, jolting me from restless sleep in Helen's chair. Ryan's name flashed on the screen. "Dad, good, you're awake." His voice was bright, cheerful, as if yesterday's cruelty had never happened. "I need to ask you for something." I waited in silence. Emma and I are planning our honeymoon in Italy. We found this amazing villa in Tuscany, but we need to put down a deposit today or we'll lose it. Can you wire $15,000? I know it sounds like a lot, but this is once in a lifetime, Dad. $15,000. On top of the $28,000 he had already stolen. "Ryan, you took money from my account without permission yesterday." "Dad, we talked about this. Don't be so dramatic about it. You've got money just sitting there collecting dust. At least this way it's going towards something that matters." Something that matters. My security meant nothing, but his Italian vacation mattered. "You didn't invite me to your engagement party." A heavy sigh, like he was dealing with a difficult child. "Look, I explained this yesterday. It was an upscale event. Emma's father is Vincent Hartwell. He owns art galleries, collects expensive pieces. These are sophisticated people with refined tastes." He paused, and I could hear the condescension building in his voice. "Dad, you live alone in the desert making paintings that nobody wants to buy. You would have felt completely out of place. I was actually protecting you from embarrassment." The words cut deep. Nobody wants to buy. Out of place. Protecting me from embarrassment. So I'm an embarrassment to you? You're my father, and I love you. But we live in completely different worlds now. Emma's family has certain expectations. They're accustomed to success, to people who've actually accomplished something meaningful with their lives. My throat tightened. "Ryan, I raised you. I paid for everything you needed. And I'm grateful for that, Dad, I really am. But that was the past. This is about my future now. Look, I'm trying to build something real here with Emma. I'm trying to make something of myself." He paused, and when he continued, his voice turned cold and sharp. "You're just a failed artist living in the past, painting abstracts that nobody understands or wants. The least you can do is make yourself useful and help me create actual success instead of whatever it is you call your life out there. Failed artist. Make yourself useful." The phone felt heavy in my hand. In the background, I could hear Emma calling to him about something, her voice bright with the kind of happiness I had once hoped my son would share with me. "So, will you send the $15,000 or not, Dad? We really need an answer today. The villa won't wait." I stared out at the mountains Helen and I used to hike, at the sunrise painting the peaks in colors that would have inspired my brushes once upon a time. Now they just reminded me of how small my world had become in my son's eyes. "Ryan," I said quietly. "Yeah? You're right about one thing. I am just a failed artist. At least make yourself useful. Isn't that what you said?" "Dad, I didn't mean..." But I had already hung up. I sat staring at the silent phone, Ryan's words burning in my ears. Failed artist. Make yourself useful. Then the phone rang again. Ryan, calling back. Don't you dare hang up on me again, he snarled. Who the hell do you think you are? I'm your father, Ryan. My father? He laughed bitterly. My father would want to see his son succeed instead of rotting away in some desert hovel feeling sorry for himself. Ryan, please. No, you listen to me, old man. I've been patient with your pathetic pity party for 4 years. Mom's dead, get over it. Sitting around painting your feelings isn't bringing her back. The mention of Helen hit like a blow. Don't talk about your mother that way. I'll talk about her however I want. You know what Mom would say if she could see you now? She'd be ashamed. Ashamed that her husband turned into some bitter hermit too selfish to help his own children. Ashamed. Helen would be ashamed of me. She'd be disgusted, Ryan continued viciously. She married a man with ambition. Look at you now, a failure living alone, hoarding money while your son tries to build a real life. I heard Lisa's voice in the background. Put it on speaker. I want to talk to him too. The phone crackled as Ryan switched modes. Hi, Dad. Lisa's voice was ice cold. Ryan told me about your selfish tantrum. I'm disappointed but not surprised. Lisa, you don't understand. I understand perfectly. Ryan's trying to start his life with a wonderful woman from a respected family, and you're sabotaging him because you're jealous. You're pathetic, she continued. Mom used to make excuses for you, said you were artistic and sensitive. But she's not here to protect your feelings anymore, is she? Ryan's laughter echoed through the speaker. Lisa's right, Dad. You're nothing but a washed-up has-been who never amounted to anything. Even Mom knew it. When was the last time anyone bought your paintings? Lisa added cruelly. When did anyone last care about your opinion? You're a nobody, Dad. A nobody with a bank account, and that's the only reason we still talk to you. At least be honest about what you are, Ryan sneered. You're not an artist, you're a wallet with legs, and not even a useful wallet anymore. The silence stretched. My children had stripped away every pretense, shown me exactly what they thought of me. Well, Lisa demanded, are you going to help Ryan, or keep being selfish? I looked around my studio, at Helen's empty chair, at paintings my children saw as proof of failure. No, I said quietly. What? Ryan's voice was sharp. Number, I'm not giving you any more money. You ungrateful bastard, Ryan exploded. After everything we've done, putting up with your depression and weird art obsession, I hung up and turned off the phone. In the sudden silence, something crystallized inside me. Not just anger or hurt, something harder and more permanent. My children had shown me exactly who they were. Now it was time to show them who I could become. The next morning, I drove into Santa Fe with a purpose I hadn't felt in years. The First National Bank sat on the plaza like it had for decades, solid and unchanging, unlike my children's loyalty. I need to close my savings account and remove all authorized users, I told the teller, a young woman with kind eyes who reminded me of Lisa before she became cruel. Of course, Mr. Mitchell. May I ask if there's been any unauthorized activity? You could say that. As she processed the paperwork, I noticed a woman at the next window arguing with another teller about art authentication. She was Asian, maybe mid-40s, with silver streaks in her black hair and paint under her fingernails. Excuse me, she said, turning to me. I couldn't help but overhear your name. Are you David Mitchell, the artist? I almost laughed. I'm David Mitchell. I wouldn't call myself an artist. Her eyes widened. You are, Sarah Chen, from the Meridian Gallery. I've been trying to track you down for months. Track me down? Why? Sarah pulled out her phone, scrolling through images. Your work has been selling through intermediaries. Abstract Oils, signed D. Mitchell, dated from the early 2000s through last year. We've sold 6 pieces in the past 18 months. She showed me the screen. It was my painting, the blue and gray abstract I'd been working on when Helen died. The one I'd given to a local coffee shop owner years ago just to get it out of my studio. This piece sold last month for $210,000. The words didn't register at first. I'm sorry, what? $210,000. The buyer was a collector from New York. He's been specifically requesting David Mitchell originals. My legs felt weak. That's impossible. Nobody buys my paintings. Mr. Mitchell, you're one of the most sought-after contemporary abstract artists in the Southwest. Your work has been featured in Art in America, Southwest Art Magazine. There's a waiting list of collectors who want your pieces. The bank teller had stopped processing my paperwork, listening with obvious fascination. But I gave that painting away, I said stupidly, to Maria at the coffee shop on Canyon Road. Maria Gonzalez sold it to our gallery 2 years ago. She said you'd given her several pieces over the years. We've been selling them as fast as we can authenticate them. Sarah leaned closer, her voice excited. Mr. Mitchell, do you have more work? Original pieces still in your possession? I thought about my studio, walls lined with canvases I'd considered failures. Dozens of them, maybe 50 or more, painted during my years of grief and solitude. I have some pieces at home. Would you be willing to let me evaluate them? Based on what I've seen sell, you could be sitting on a collection worth millions. Millions. The word echoed in my head as I signed the final papers to close my account. Ryan had stolen $28,000, called me a failed artist, said I was worthless except for my money. Here's my card, Sarah said. I'd love to visit your studio this afternoon if you're available. This could change everything for you. I took her card with shaking hands. Sarah Chen, Gallery Director, Meridian Contemporary Arts. Mr. Mitchell? The bank teller handed me a receipt. Your account has been closed and all authorized users removed. Is there anything else I can help you with today? Actually, yes, I said, my voice growing stronger. I'd like to open a new account. A private one. No authorized users this time. As I walked out of the bank with Sarah's card in my pocket, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years. Not just hope, but power. My children had called me a failure, a nobody, a wallet with legs. They had no idea what they had just lost access to, and they had no idea who they were really dealing with. I was still processing Sarah's revelation when my phone exploded with calls. Ryan's name flashed on the screen repeatedly. I let it ring. Then came the text messages. Call me now. What did you do to the account? Dad, answer your phone. I turned the phone off and drove home in peace for the first time in years. By evening, I was ready to face whatever storm was coming. I turned the phone back on. 17 missed calls from Ryan, 12 from Lisa. I waited. The phone rang within seconds. What the hell did you do? Ryan's voice was pure rage, no pretense of civility left. I closed my bank account. You can't do that. I have expenses. The honeymoon deposit is due tomorrow. Then I suggest you find another way to pay for it. Are you out of your goddamn mind? You can't just cut off my access without warning. That's my money too. Your money? I kept my voice calm. Ryan, it's my savings account. My name, my social security number, my money. Bullshit. I've been helping you manage that account for 3 years. I have rights. You had privileges, which you abused. The silence was brief. Then Ryan's voice turned vicious. You think you're so smart, don't you? Well, congratulations, Dad. You just destroyed your relationship with your children over money. Hope it was worth it. It wasn't about the money, Ryan. It was about respect. Respect? He laughed, a sound like breaking glass. You want respect? Earn it. Do something with your pathetic life instead of hiding in that desert playing with finger paints. I'm done with this conversation. No, you're not done. You're going to listen to me for once in your miserable life. Emma's family thinks I'm successful. They think I have money, that I can provide for their daughter. Do you know what happens when they find out my father is some broke hermit who cut me off? That's your problem to solve. My problem? Ryan's voice cracked with fury. You selfish bastard! You've never cared about anyone but yourself. Even when Mom was dying, you were more worried about your stupid paintings than taking care of her. The accusation hit like a physical blow. That's not true, isn't it? She spent her last months watching you mope around your studio instead of living. She told me she regretted marrying a man with no ambition, no drive, no ability to provide for his family. Your mother never said that. She said it to me plenty of times. She was ashamed of you, Dad. Ashamed of what you'd become. A failure who couldn't even sell a painting to pay for his wife's medical bills. My hands were shaking now. Helen had never said those things. She couldn't have. You know what the worst part is? Ryan continued, his voice dropping to a whisper that was somehow more terrifying than his screaming. She's probably grateful she died before she had to watch you become even more pathetic than you already were. The line went quiet, except for his breathing. And honestly, after dealing with your selfish, manipulative bullshit for the past 4 years, I wish you had died instead of her. At least Mom actually cared about her children. The words hung in the air like poison. I wish you had died instead of Mom. Ryan, I whispered. What? Did I hurt your feelings? Good. Maybe now you'll understand how it feels to be disappointed by someone you're supposed to be able to count on. I hung up and sat in the darkness of my studio, surrounded by paintings worth millions that my son would never see, never benefit from, never understand. Some words, once spoken, can never be taken back. Some bridges, once burned, can never be rebuilt. Ryan had just shown me exactly who he really was, and I would never forget. 3 days later, a knock at my door interrupted my morning coffee. A young woman stood on my porch, blonde, well-dressed, with kind eyes that reminded me of Helen at that age. Mr. Mitchell? I'm Emma Carter. Ryan's former fiancé. Former. The word hung between us. Please, come in. She sat carefully in Helen's chair, hands folded in her lap. I owe you an apology. A huge one. You don't owe me anything, Emma. Yes, I do. Her voice was firm. Ryan told me you'd declined to come to our engagement party. He said you were too busy with your art, that you preferred your solitude. I said nothing. But yesterday, I overheard him on the phone with Lisa. They were laughing about how they'd excluded you, calling you terrible things. About how you were just a wallet with legs and how they'd never actually wanted you there. Emma's eyes filled with tears. Mr. Mitchell, I had no idea. If I'd known you weren't invited, I would have insisted. My parents raised me to respect family, especially elders. It's not your fault, Emma. When I confronted Ryan about it, he got angry. Started saying awful things about you, about how you were a failed artist who lived like a hermit. Then he told me about the money, how he'd been taking from your account without asking. She paused, wiping her eyes. But the worst part was when he said he wished you had died instead of your wife. That's when I knew I couldn't marry him. The weight of Ryan's words still stung, but hearing Emma's shock somehow lessened the pain. I called off the engagement this morning, she continued. Returned the ring, canceled the venue. My father was furious, not at me, but at Ryan. Dad said any man who treats his father like trash will eventually treat his wife the same way. I'm sorry your relationship ended because of this. Emma shook her head. You didn't end it, Mr. Mitchell. Ryan did, the moment he showed me who he really is. A man who steals from his father and then wishes him dead isn't someone I could ever love. She stood to leave, then turned back. There's something else you should know. My father really is Vincent Hartwell, the art collector Ryan was trying to impress. When I told Dad about your paintings, he was very interested. He'd like to meet you sometime, if you're willing. After Emma left, I sat in the quiet of my studio. Justice, it seemed, had its own timeline. Ryan had lost his fiancée, his wedding, his future with the Hartwell family, all because he couldn't hide his true nature. But I felt no satisfaction in his downfall, only sadness for the son I'd raised who had become someone I no longer recognized. Some consequences choose their own moment to arrive. 2 weeks later, I was working in my studio when I heard car doors slam in my driveway. Through the window, I saw Ryan's BMW and a rental car. Both my children had come home. I didn't open the door when they knocked. I waited. Dad, we know you're in there, Ryan called. His voice had lost its arrogant edge, replaced by something desperate. We need to talk. Please, Dad, Lisa added. Just give us 5 minutes. I opened the door. They looked terrible. Ryan's expensive clothes were wrinkled, his hair unwashed. Lisa's eyes were red from crying. Success hadn't been kind to them. Can we come in? Ryan asked. I stepped aside. They sat on my couch like strangers, not the children I'd raised. Ryan spoke first. Dad, I know things got heated on the phone. I said some things I didn't mean. You said you wished I had died instead of your mother. Ryan flinched. I was angry. People say stupid things when they're angry. Do they? Look, Emma left me. The wedding's off. I lost my job because her father had connections with my company. I'm basically homeless. Lisa nodded. I got laid off too. My rent's due next week and I don't have the money. They sat there looking at me expectantly, waiting for me to offer solutions like I always had. I'm sorry to hear that, I said. Dad, Ryan leaned forward, I know I messed up, but we're family. Family forgives each other, right? Family helps each other through tough times. You're right. Family does help each other. Hope flickered in their eyes. But you stopped being my family the moment you decided I was worthless, except for my money. That's not true, Lisa protested. We love you, Dad. You love my bank account. There's a difference. Ryan's desperation was turning to anger again. This is all your fault anyway. If you hadn't closed the account, none of this would have happened. Emma would still be with me. I'd still have my job. Stop. My voice was quiet but firm. Even now, you're blaming me for the consequences of your own choices. What choices? Trying to build a life? Trying to succeed? Stealing from me, excluding me, calling me a failure, wishing I was dead. Ryan stood up, his mask slipping again. You want to play victim? Fine. But you're the one destroying this family over money. You're the one being selfish. I'm being selfish? Yes. Mom would be disgusted with you. She'd be ashamed that you're abandoning your children when they need you most. There it was again, using Helen against me. I walked to the door and opened it. Get out. Dad, wait, Lisa started. Number. You want to know what your mother would think? She'd be heartbroken that the children she loved so much grew up to be people who steal from their father, and then blame him for their problems. Ryan's face twisted with rage. You're going to regret this, old man. We're the only family you have left. You forgot who raised you, I said quietly. You forgot the man who sacrificed everything for your happiness. Now you'll learn what life looks like without him. I closed the door and turned the deadbolt. They pounded on it for several minutes, alternating between apologies and threats. Finally, I heard their cars start and drive away. In the silence that followed, I felt something I hadn't expected. Not sadness, not anger, but peace. I had given them 30 years of my life. They had given me nothing but contempt in return. Some doors, once closed, should stay that way forever. 1 year later, I stood in the Meridian Gallery, surrounded by my life's work. 53 paintings lined the walls, each one marked with a red sold sticker. The opening night of David Mitchell. The hidden years had exceeded every expectation. Sarah Chen approached with a champagne flute and a smile. The Times Review called you a master of emotional abstraction. The collector from Tokyo just bought 3 more pieces. I nodded, still adjusting to this new reality. In 12 months, my life had transformed completely. The shy hermit who painted in solitude had become one of the Southwest's most celebrated artists. Gallery showings in Santa Fe, Albuquerque, Phoenix. A waiting list of collectors stretching months into the future. There's someone here who'd like to meet you, Sarah said, gesturing toward a distinguished older man near my largest canvas. Vincent Hartwell. Emma's father approached with genuine warmth. Mr. Mitchell, your work is extraordinary. I'm sorry it took these circumstances for us to meet. How is Emma? Thriving. She's engaged to a young doctor now, someone who treats his family with respect. His meaning was clear. As the evening wound down, I walked through the gallery one last time. Each painting told a story of grief transformed into beauty, loneliness converted into art. Helen had been right, my work would outlive us all. The next morning brought an envelope with no return address. Inside, Ryan's handwriting covered 3 pages. Dad, I know you probably won't read this, but I have to try. It's been a year since we last spoke, and not a day goes by that I don't regret what I said to you. I saw the article about your gallery showing in the LA Times. Local artists' work sells for 6 figures. I couldn't believe it. All those paintings I called worthless. I was so wrong about everything. Emma won't speak to me. I lost my apartment last month. Lisa and I are both struggling, and I know it's because of the choices we made. The cruel things we said. I was angry and scared, and I took it out on you. But saying I wished you had died instead of Mom. Dad, I don't know how to live with that. I don't know how you can ever forgive me. I know I don't deserve another chance, but you're my father. You're the only family I have left. Can we please try to fix this? I love you, Dad. I always have, even when I was too stupid and selfish to show it. Your son, Ryan. I read the letter twice, then walked to my studio. The morning light streamed through the windows where Helen used to sit, illuminating canvases that had brought me more success than I'd ever imagined. Ryan's words were sincere. His regret seemed genuine. A year ago, this letter might have moved me to forgiveness, to another chance, to the endless cycle of enabling I'd practiced for 30 years. But some wounds cut too deep. Some words, once spoken, poisoned the well forever. I wish you had died instead of Mom. I folded the letter carefully and walked to the fireplace Helen and I had built together decades ago. The flames caught the paper immediately, curling the edges, turning Ryan's apologies to ash. Outside, The mountains stood eternal and unchanging. I had learned their lesson well. Some storms you weather, some you simply endure, but you don't have to let them define you. I picked up my brush and began a new painting. This one would be different from the others, not born from grief or loneliness, but from the quiet strength that comes from knowing your own worth. Some words can never be taken back. Some bridges, once burned, should stay that way. And some fathers, after a lifetime of giving, finally learn that they are worth more than what they can provide. David's journey reminds us that love without boundaries isn't love at all. It's enablement. As a father, he learned the hardest lesson any parent can face. Sometimes protecting your children from consequences actually destroys them. This family story teaches us that respect must flow both ways, even between parents and adult children. God gives us wisdom to know when to give and when to withhold. Just as the Lord sets boundaries with his children for their growth, earthly fathers must sometimes do the same. David's decision wasn't made in anger, but in the painful recognition that true love sometimes requires saying no. Many grandpa stories like this one show us that our worth isn't measured by what we provide, but by who we are. David discovered his artistic gifts were valuable not because they brought money, but because they expressed his soul. When God closes one door, Ryan's rejection, he opens another, David's artistic recognition. This family story resonates because it reflects a truth many parents face: children who see them only as resources, not as people deserving respect. Grandpa stories often carry these hard-won lessons about dignity and self-worth. The Lord teaches us that some words, once spoken, leave permanent scars. David's choice to prioritize his own worth over endless forgiveness shows us that healthy relationships require mutual respect. Sometimes the most loving thing a parent can do is let their children face the full weight of their choices. What's your take on David's decision? Have you ever had to set difficult boundaries with family? Share your thoughts below. Your story might help someone else facing a similar crossroads.